Welcome everyone to our 7th class in the S'dei Chemed, in this series of Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 universal Noachide commandments for all of mankind, for the entire non-Jewish world. And we are currently in the encyclopedia called S'dei Chemed, Volume 8, page 3216, bottom of the right-hand column by the Gimel. So today we are going to begin a new topic within the general topic over here that we're dealing with the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach and various different questions. Basically what we're doing is we're taking Jewish concepts within Jewish law and seeing how they do or don't, or to what extent and in what way they apply to the non-Jew. So now we're up to the third topic. Some of these topics are relatively short, and some of them, such as the one that we just concluded last class, are very lengthy and so long that sometimes, with all different opinions and all the give and take, at the end you wonder, well, what is the conclusion? So I'm not going to try to sum up the previous classes, just remind you of the topic. The topic was shi'urin, measurements, amounts. Do they apply to non-Jews, and how do they apply? In the Jewish world, in Jewish law, we know that measurements play a very, very crucial role as far as the punishment, as far as the penalty of transgressing goes. How much did the person eat? How much did the person drink? What was the distance, etc., etc. How does this apply to the non-Jews? And there was discussion back and forth. I think that the conclusion, at least of the S'dei Chemed, this Rabbi, Chaim, Hezekiah, Medini, was that shi'urim don't apply at all to B'nai Noach, and anything which is forbidden for a Ben Noach, which classically out of the 7 commandments as far as eating is concerned, would be Eiver min hachai, to eat a part of an animal that was separated, was detached from the animal before the animal was completely dead. So that prohibition applies. And for the Ben Noach, no matter how little he eats, it is still considered the same transgression with the same penalty. Whereas for the Jew, which Eiver min hachai is also forbidden, but there it's a different story, and there is the amount, there is the measurement, as is the case in most cases. All right, so that was a very lengthy discussion, as opposed to the first topic, which was very short. Now we're coming to the third topic, which is going to be as well very lengthy, and the fourth topic is going to be short again. So this topic is going to take us a number of classes, and we're going to try to take it piece by piece, little by little. And the subject here is a concept called Bitul, nullification. We know that in Jewish law, in general, with many, many details, there's the concept of something forbidden that, after the fact, got mixed into something permitted, or vice versa. So does the whole mixture become forbidden? Does it all become permitted? Like, what do you do? So as a very, very general rule, which it gets much more complicated than this, but as a very general rule, biblically speaking, in most cases, the rule is Bitul beroiv, that you go by the majority. So for instance, if you have 2 permissible pieces of food and a third that is forbidden, and they got all mixed up, and there's no way to identify it. If you can identify it, then of course you can't eat the forbidden one. But now, you don't know what's what. They got mixed together. So since the ratio was 2 against 1, 2 good, 1 bad, all 3 are good. That's in very general, theoretical law. So the question is, how does it work by the Bnei Noach? If he's got 2 pieces of kosher meat for the Ben Noach and 1 piece of non-kosher meat for the Ben Noach, it's Eiver Min HaChai, and they got mixed together, how does that work? All right, so let's see what he says. Again, on the bottom of the right-hand column, on page 3216. Al mashevesi bitfus bois hen sifkat chav. So the S'dei Chemed is making a reference to what he brought elsewhere in chapter 55, section 20. Machloikas, a dispute. Imahani bitul beroiv leben noach. Does nullification in majority, does that help? Does that work for ben noach? So with regards to that topic, Kosav li yedidi hagoin marash Fredis mechaber sefer Kerem Chemed av bezdin kilas liyadi yishmei mitzurim v'chaskeim v'zel shoynoi בספרי הקודש, חלק הכלולים במערכת הגימול, אויס נון ה' סעיף חוף, דף פ' בייז עמוד א'. I'm sorry. He says like this. He's quoting a letter that he received from a friend of his, the S'dei Chemed, and this friend of his, who wrote to him as follows, and then he quotes what this friend writes to the S'dei Chemed. Besifroi HaKadosh, in his holy book, referring to the S'dei Chemed. It's in third person out of respect. So in your holy book, Chelek HaKlolim, in the section of the Klolim, the generalizations, B'mareches HaGimel, Ois Nun Hei, Sif Chav. This is exactly where the S'dei Chemed told us that it's found. Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, on page 82, side A. You, you're a great honorable individual. May Hashem, may God bless you and protect you. Deyois, you brought down opinions. Hasoivrim, that hold, that for Bnei Noach, the concept of nullification, of being a minority, and therefore considered as a non-entity, does not work. And take a look there at what he wrote. Ulefize, and according to this, Ratzisi loymar davar chadash ledina. I wanted to suggest a novel, a new idea, which is actual legally practical in Jewish law. Im nisarev regel shenechtach me'avaza chaya b'sech raglei avazos shchutos. He says like this, practically speaking, following case. If a foot which was cut off of a live duck got mixed into feet of slaughtered ducks. Okay, that's the case. Now you look at the foot, you cannot tell whether it came from a slaughtered duck or from a duck that was still alive. Foot's a foot. So you got a bunch of feet, duck feet. Duck is kosher. The pasak halavushe srad b'chidushe dinim l'yeredeya l'hilchos ama din chulu. All right, so one of the commentaries on the Jewish Code of Law, he rules that in such a case, all those feet are prohibited. So you got 10 duck feet which are kosher, which came from slaughtered animal, 1 duck foot, which came from a non-kosher duck because it was detached when the duck was still living, wasn't slaughtered. He says all those feet are all no good, non-kosher. ולפי הנ"ל, יש למצוא היתר בזה. But, according to the above mentioned, we should be able to find a way to permit it. Well, how's that? In one of the main commentators on the Jewish Code of Law, known as the Turei Zahav, in the laws of forbidden clothing mixture, you know that for Jewish people there's certain mixtures which are not allowed. One of them is wool and linen in the same garment. So over there, he says, Dehecha, that in such a case where if you're unable to sell the mixture to a non-Jew, you have the following case. A guy is selling clothing. 10 of them are wool, 100% kosher. One of them, which you can't discern which one it is. It's too late now. And now you realize one of these garments had wool and linen woven together in it. So now you're stuck. 10 of them I know are good. One isn't. I just don't know which one is the one that's no good. So the best thing is sell all 11 to a non-Jew, because non-Jews are allowed to wear wool and linen mixture. It's not one of the 7 Noahide commandments. So, listen to what the Taz says, the Turei Zahav. In a case where, for whatever reason, the Jew is unable to sell it to the non-Jew, so what should you do? He says, take any one, so to say random, of this mixture, throw that one into the ocean. In other words, get rid of it. And the rest are good. Uvichan, and here, so he wants to suggest that in this case of the duck feet, it should work in a similar fashion. Why? Because by the forbidden mixture of wool and linen, for whatever reason I can't, but otherwise I should be able to sell all 11 jackets, all 11 garments to a non-Jew. And what's the big deal? One of them is wool and linen, the other are not. Doesn't matter, he's not Jewish. By the duck feet I can't do it. Okay, why not? Because the non-Jew is also forbidden to eat that foot of the duck that came from an animal that was still alive. So it's not like, for the Jew, I have to eat duck that was slaughtered, ritually slaughtered. But for the non-Jew, what? He doesn't have to eat slaughtered, but it's got to be dead before the foot was removed, and there the foot was removed. So it should be just like the case of not being able to sell the garments to the non-Jew. For the non-Jews are forbidden to eat a limb off of a live animal. And one of those duck feet was removed from the animal that was alive. Top of the left-hand column. And it does not help to say that it's nullified in the majority. You can't say, you know what, give the non-Jew, sell him or give him all 11 duck feet. Because 10 of them are kosher for him as well. They came from a slaughtered duck. And one of them is not. But it's okay, we don't know which one it is. We don't say that. V'im kain, so if so, using the logic, using the law of the garments, mutar lechatchila lahapil regel echad layam. It would be permissible at this point to take one of those duck feet, random, just pick one, and throw it into the ocean. In other words, destroy it, get rid of it. V'litlois, and then to say that shezeu ha'isur, that the one that we threw out is the actual forbidden one. V'chol ha'raglayim mutarim b'achila, and all the other remaining feet are permissible to be consumed. Vidal, and this is enough to understand. All right, so that's what the Turei Zov wants to suggest. That why forbid all the duck feet? Why say they're all no good? Why not just take one and throw it away, and the other 10 should be good? Just like by the case of the garment. However, we could push off this explanation. How could we push it off? Because you do have the option of selling to two non-Jews, to two bnei noyach. Some to him, some to the other one. Because each one of them can eat some of these duck feet. Because we have a rule, that's what he says, that a doubt, if something is in doubt whether it's forbidden or not, a ben noyach is allowed to eat it. So if you have a piece of meat that for some reason we don't know if it's Eiver Min HaChai, it's doubtful, they're allowed to. Ben noyach can eat it. So if I were to sell or give all 11 duck feet to one person, then I have a problem. Because each foot is probably kosher for him, but it's a doubt. And if he's to consume all 11 feet, well, then he certainly ate a forbidden piece of meat. However, if I take these 11 duck feet and I give 5 to one person, 6 to the other, judging each one individually, every single piece that each one of those two people have may in fact be kosher. They may not be Eiver Min HaChai. So when Ben Noyach A consumes his 5 duck feet, he may have eaten all 5 slaughtered ducks, which is good. Then, when I focus on Ben Noyach B, and he ate his 6 duck feet, it's very possible that he, in fact, ate all 6 kosher slaughtered ducks. And it was the other fellow who had the non-kosher Eiver Min HaChai duck foot. So since it's 2 different people, it's not the same as one person consuming everything where we know that one of those is no good. And since when you're in doubt for a ben noyach, it's permissible. Ukmashakasav apri megadim al oira Chaim bepsicha beseder an hagis isur veheter beseder sheni ois mem gimel ayin shom hetev. Okay, so he's bringing as support one of the very famous, very strong commentator on the commentators of the Jewish Code of Law. The name of the book is called the Pri Megadim, which is now printed in most of the codes of law. And he has an extremely lengthy and very, very fundamental introduction to how to learn, how to rule Jewish law. When it comes to the Code of Jewish Law, so this Pri Megadim explains in great detail many rules of how what we call today a rabbi is to be able to determine, based on the rules of the Code of Law, the proper ruling. So over there, he tells us exactly where to look it up. And he says, take a very strong, very clear analyzation there. Okay, up to here was a quote from this friend of the S'dei Chemed that he wrote to him. After the S'dei Chemed says that Bitul Beroiv does not work, you can't nullify something for ben noyach. So he went into this whole discussion about the example of the duck feet and how that could be different than the Jew with the garment that has in it the forbidden mixture. Omar HaMechaber. Says the author, which I think the S'dei Chemed is referring to himself. Ma shenire midivrei harav yishmei mitzrim v'chaskeim. Dadin pashut kein la pri megadim. That which you seem to say, that it seems very simple and obvious according to the pri megadim. Tilishnei vnei noyach mutar litin ktsas lozeh v'ktsas lozeh. Mishum desofik mutar livnei noyach. That to two different bnei noyach, two different people, you're permitted to give some of the mixture to one person and some to the other person, because the rule is that a doubt of a prohibition is permitted for bnei noyach. So, says the S'dei Chemed, Anoichi haroyeh, I see the hamilsa rafia biyodei de hagoyin pri megadim, that this statement itself is weak. It's very shaky within the words in the hands of the Pri Megadim. Ve'atik divrei kadshoy kichsavoy uchilashoynoi. I am going to now copy. I'm going to quote the words of the Pri Megadim in his exact language. I'm going to quote him word for word. Bo'is membeis kasav bedin eiver minachai b'siman samach beis. Quote, what does he say with regards to eiver minachai, the limb off of a live animal? V'asur litein eiver minachai leven noyach. Says the Pri Megadim, it is forbidden for a Jew to give eiver minachai, part of a living animal, to a non-Jew. The eiver alifne eiver, for the Jew then is transgressing before a blind man, thou shalt not put a stumbling block, which is a very general prohibition, which we've discussed a number of times in various classes. And we also discussed whether it applies between Jew and non-Jew, and here we see very simply, straightforward, of course it applies. No one is allowed to be the cause, to assist or to cause someone else to stumble, whether that is physically or spiritually. So the literal translation of that verse is, in front of a blind man, you may not put a stumbling block. Someone's walking down the street. This person is blind. You're not allowed to take a big brick or a block and put it down so that the blind person trips over it and falls on his face. That is forbidden. That expression now is used in a very wide range. Basically, I'm not allowed to be the cause of someone else doing something wrong or getting hurt. I'm not allowed to give someone bad advice in business. Nothing to do with transgression, nothing to do with stealing. Someone asks me for business advice. Is this worth it to invest? So if I sincerely think that it is good advice and it ended up being bad advice, no problem. I didn't do anything wrong. So this is really something which is between the person and his maker. Only you yourself, and of course, God Almighty, knows your true intentions. So when I tell someone, I think you should really invest a lot of money in that, and it ends up flopping, and he loses a lot of money, I may have transgressed, I may have not. I surely owe him no money, no question about that. He cannot, even if I had bad intentions, he cannot demand any money from me, no compensation. And if I really did mean bad, and I really did think that what happened was going to happen, I transgressed though. However, if I was sincere and I really thought that it was good advice, then I didn't even do anything wrong. It's unfortunate for him, I did nothing wrong. And the same thing applies to a prohibition. I cannot assist someone or give them advice to commit a crime, to commit a sin. Even though legally no one could come back to me and say, hey, you told him to. So I told him? Because I told a person to steal, therefore what? He should know better. True. No one can do anything to me. The court system, the Jewish court can't do anything to me. Whatever the secular law might be, maybe I'm an accomplice in some way, I don't know. But by Jewish law, if I gave someone bad advice, I am not able to, they can't come after me at all. However, between me and God, I have transgressed. So, a Jew cannot cause a non-Jew to transgress any of the 7 Noahide commandments. Therefore, it is forbidden for a Jew to give Eiver Min HaChai to a non-Jew. So let's say I have non-kosher dairy, milk. What's non-kosher about it? It's horse milk. Okay, I have a horse, and someone milked my horse, and now I have this container of horse milk. Well, I can't serve it to my family, and I can't eat it or drink it. And I have a next door neighbor who's not Jewish. Or I have someone who works for me. One of my employees is not Jewish. Or my employer, I work for someone, he's not Jewish. Whatever the case is, I'm allowed to sell or give this non-kosher milk to them. Assuming that milk is not Eiver Min HaChai. Same thing applies if I have wine that's not kosher. So I can give it to a non-Jew. How about if I have meat that is nevela, which means the animal died on its own, it wasn't properly slaughtered, it died of old age. That meat I'm allowed to give a non-Jew to eat. But Eiver Min HaChai I may not. So the Pri Megadim says, a Jew is forbidden to give Eiver Min HaChai to the non-Jew. Why? Because of Lifnei Iver, because it's putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Af Eiver Min HaChai mitmeim noig beven noyach. Now, interesting point. When it comes to the Jew, even though a Jew is not allowed to have Eiver Min HaChai, but that prohibition is only from animals that are kosher, meaning kosher types, whether it's a bull, an ox, a cow, a sheep, a goat, a lamb, a ram, any of those animals, I'm not allowed to eat from that animal that it was detached before the animal was dead. But if it's a non-kosher animal, such as a pig, a horse, a donkey, any of those non-kosher animals, a lion, a tiger, a dog, a cat, any of those animals, for the Jew to eat a limb off of that live animal is not a prohibition in addition to it being a non-kosher animal. It's a prohibition because I can't eat anything of that animal. But there's no difference whether you slaughter the pig or whether you ripped off a leg of the pig. For the Jew, it's the same prohibition. It's not Eiver Min HaChai. For the non-Jew, that's not so. For the non-Jew, first of all, there's no types of animals which are not kosher. A non-Jew is allowed to eat any animal as long as it was killed before this part of the animal was removed from it. So, a Jew may not give Eiver Min HaChai to a non-Jew. V'af oif u'basar min HaChai beven noyach noyeg. And likewise, when it comes to fowl, for ben noyach, it's all Eiver Min HaChai. Anything which is detached when the animal or the bird was still alive falls into the category of Eiver Min HaChai. Ayin mashakasuv befarei sham v'sham nistapaknu ishayich bitul beroiv bebenoyach. And over there, he says, we have a doubt. We're discussing over there whether you could say that it becomes nullified in the majority when it comes to bnei noyach. V'hainu, meaning Litein hakoyle benoyach biyachad. Can I give it all to a benoyach together? I got a mixture over here. Most of it is permissible for the benoyach to eat. But in there's a mixture of something, some meat, which is Aver min achai. Can I just give him the whole lot? Kidam rinan, bois mem gimel kosav. Amnam litin echad mehem lebenoyach zeh vechad lebenoyach acher. However, can I give one of these items to one benoyach and another single piece of meat here to another benoyach? That's a different story. Yesh loymar, there we could say, af nisarev chad bechad mutar litin lohem kol echad bifnei atzmai the suffix teira leman domer midir rabbanon asur im ken lebenoyach shari. This is very interesting. You have two pieces of meat, or majority of kosher of edible for non kosher for a non-Jew, and one is Aver min achai. And then I have a number of non-Jews. Can I individually take each one and hand it to a different non-Jew? So you would think, maybe I can't, because one of them is surely getting a piece that he's not allowed to eat, because I'm giving one to each person. So he says, no. The problem with eating something which may be forbidden is only for the Jew, and it's a rabbinic prohibition. If something is biblically a doubt, there's some food which biblically is forbidden for a Jew to eat, but it's not all, and I'm in doubt. I don't know if it's permitted or not. There may be some food which is biblically forbidden for a Jew to eat. So one opinion says that rabbinically speaking, I'm not allowed to eat any of it. But this would not apply to a benoyach. It's permissible. Ve'af leman domar safek min haTeira asur, and even according to the opinion that says that something which is biblically in doubt, whether it's permissible or not, is forbidden. Hainu mikra. That's from the verse. Ushnei mikra echad lamdua. And both of these different opinions learn it out of the same verse. Whether I say that biblically speaking, something which is in doubt is permissible, it's only that the rabbis came and said forbidden, or biblically speaking, something which is a doubt is biblically forbidden, they both derive it from the same verse. Haram v'Rabbeinu atzerfasim k'mavur b'teiras habayis l'safik mamzer. So he brings the source for this, where they discuss it. Mashein kein ben noyach. That's all speaking about two opinions within the Jew. But that's not the case when it comes to the non-Jew, the ben noyach. Efshar, it's possible, that when the Torah speaks to the non-Jew, to the ben noyach, and says, you're not allowed to eat the limb off of a live animal. Bevadai isur, loy besafik isur. The Torah is only speaking when it's a definite prohibition, not when it's a doubtful prohibition. So if I know that this piece of meat is Aver min achai, that's when the Torah tells the ben noyach it's forbidden. But if I have a piece of meat which I don't know, it may be Aver min achai, it may not be. Torah does not forbid that for ben noyach. V'af l'mashakosav sifsei koyen bekuf yud techad bechad kegufei shel isur ve'ikva isura. Now there's one of the other main commentaries on the Code of Jewish Law, the S'dei Chemed. So he states like this, that if you have one against one, that is equivalent to being prohibited. If you have one piece which is kosher, permissible, one piece which is non-kosher, forbidden, and they got mixed up, you don't know which is which. He says one against one, that is considered like the actual prohibition. And therefore, the prohibition has become established. So you don't look at it and saying, oh, there's a mixture here. 50% is good, 50% is not. No, it now became a new entity that 100% is no good. So even according to that, Mikol Makoim, nonetheless, Yesh Loimar, we can say that even in such a case, as far as the ben noach is concerned, it's permissible. Because it's a doubt. 50-50 is a doubt. For the Jew, it became an entity of prohibition and it's all forbidden. For the ben noach, even though there's no majority, it's 1 against 1, it could still be permissible. Ki hai gavna, in such a case. The kolshkin, surely, how much more so? Im safik loy, im zeo ever min achai, oy lav. How about if it's not just that there's a mixture, and I don't know which piece is permitted, which is forbidden. He's not even sure if this piece in front of him is actually ever min achai. He's got one piece of meat. He doesn't know, is this ever min achai or is it not? The efshar shari leben noach. So he wants to suggest that possibly, in that case, it would be permissible for a ben noach. V'tzarich iyun, and he leaves it with a question. He does not come to a conclusion, but the S'dei Chemed says we need to look into this. Ad kan l'shoinoi. End of quote. Hare. What do we see from here, though? Says the S'dei Chemed. The sipuke misapkale, that he's in doubt. He's not sure. Umasik b'tzarich iyun. And he concludes with leaving it as a question that we need to delve into this topic. And he says we're going to take a look further where we're going to discuss whether a doubt is forbidden for ben noach, according to the opinion that says that being strict when you're in doubt is a biblical obligation. In other words, within Jewish law itself, regarding the Jew, now we're not talking about the ben noach, regarding the law, how it applies to the Jew, so everybody agrees that the rule is that if it's a biblical doubt, in other words, if you're in doubt as to whether this is biblically forbidden, then you have to be strict. The question, though, the argument is that rule a biblical rule or is that law a rabbinic rule? So let me explain. Let's say, biblically speaking, it's forbidden for a Jew to eat a particular piece of meat, either because the animal is not a kosher type of an animal, it's a pig, it's a horse, it's a lion, or the animal was not slaughtered. It's nevela or treifa, it's a different type of, so even though the type of animal is kosher, but the sheep was killed by a lion, can't eat it. Biblically speaking, okay. But now, let's say I have a piece of meat in front of me where I don't know. I simply don't know. Is this slaughtered kosher meat or is it meat that is nevela or treifa, the non-kosher meat? And there's no way to tell. It's a piece of lamb chop. I don't know. Was it slaughtered and then chopped or did the lion chop up the animal? And there's no way to tell. It's cooked. Everyone agrees that I'm not allowed to eat it. One opinion, though, says the fact that you have to be strict and not eat it, that you're prohibited from eating it, one opinion says that's only rabbinic. Biblically speaking, because there's a doubt, I would be allowed to eat it. But the rabbis came along and said, no, we don't allow it. The other opinion says, no, the prohibition against eating it is a biblical prohibition for the Jew. That when the Torah says that a Jew can't eat this, that means to say that if you're in doubt, and it might be that, you can't eat it, biblically speaking. So at the end of the day, everybody agrees it's prohibited. Question is that prohibition biblical or rabbinic? Now, that whole discussion only applies to the Jew. Whereas by the ben noach, all the things that the Torah says the ben noach may not eat, ever min achai, is only if it's certainly ever min achai. But if he truly and sincerely and honestly has a doubt, is this ever min achai? I don't know. It's a piece of meat. I don't know. Did they actually kill the animal first and then remove this piece of meat? Or did this leg, this piece of the duck, get removed when the duck was still alive? Don't know. No way of telling now. If you don't know, no problem. Because you don't have to be strict. That strictness in a biblical prohibition only applies to the Jew. And even there, we're not sure if it's a biblical prohibition or if it's a rabbinic prohibition. But for the non-Jew, it doesn't apply. All right, next paragraph. Again, we're in the middle of the left-hand column with the big word v'hinei. Right in the middle. V'hinei. B'prime godim, simen samech beis. B'mishpotzes, b'diber maschil oid nistapakti. Hu harishoin asher nistapek im yesh bitul beroiv leiver min achai latir leben noyach. Says the S'dei Chemed. Actually, the first person to discuss this, to have a doubt as to whether we say for Bnei Noyach that Eiver Min HaChai can become nullified in a majority. If there is a majority which is permissible and a minority got mixed in which is not allowed, do we say Bitul? The first one to doubt and to discuss this is the pre-Megadim. Lahatir leben Noyach. Do we permit this to a Ben Noyach and say, well, the majority of the meat is kosher for the Ben Noyach, therefore it's all good. V'zeh l'shoynoi. And now we quote this Pri Megadim, which again is one of the main commentators on the commentators of the Code of Law. Oid nistapakti. Furthermore, I am in doubt. Be'ever min achai, with regards to a piece of meat which was detached from a living animal, shnisbatel beroiv shchutois, that became nullified with a majority of properly ritually slaughtered animals. L'didan, for us, min ha'Torah sharia. So for the Jew, biblically, that whole mixture, that piece that I'm in doubt about, is permissible. U'midrabanan mishum birya asur. But, rabbinically speaking, it's forbidden because it's a creature unto itself. And if the limb was cut, oy basar, or meat, flesh, me'achai, from the living, af midrabanan batel hu, then even rabbinically it would be batel. It would be considered nullified. See, there's another issue here, and that's called birya, which means an entire being. As far as the Jew is concerned, in Jewish law, the measurements that we speak about, that a Jew would be punished for eating a certain amount, known as the kizayis, as we discussed at great length in all the previous classes, that does not apply if you're eating an entire creature, no matter how small it is. Well, as long as it's not microscopic. But as long as it's visible, no matter how small it is, that would be the same prohibition as eating a certain measurement. So in other words, if let's say a person were to eat, if a Jew were to eat a very, very, very small insect, nowhere near any prescribed forbidden amount. But if he was to eat the entire insect, that would be a prohibition with the penalty. He would get lashes, whatever the punishment is. So, if you have Eiver Min HaChai, an entire limb, that's a problem. So therefore, rabbinically speaking, if you have a mixture of permitted pieces of meat, and one of them might be Eiver Min HaChai, so then that would be forbidden for the Jew to eat, rabbinically speaking, because it's an entire limb. But if it's just a sliver, if it's a piece of that limb or a piece of that flesh, not the entire limb, then even rabbinically, because it got mixed in and we're in doubt as to what's what, it would be permitted for the Jew to eat it. Mihu, however, liten levenoyach. But even in such a case where the Jew is allowed to eat it, to give it to a non-Jew, mi nema lekamide v'chuli. Do we in fact say that there's room to allow it to a ben noyach? Maybe not. In other words, perhaps we're going to say, no, there can't be something which is permitted for the Jew and forbidden for the non-Jew. It doesn't make any sense. Aver min achai is forbidden for Jew. Aver min achai is forbidden for the non-Jew. So here you have a mixture of a doubt, and because it's not an entire limb, therefore the Jew would be allowed to eat it. So how could it be that the ben noyach can't? Oy nema li Yisrael nafik bitul ha'isurin. Or perhaps we could say as follows. When it comes to the Jews, and when it comes to Jewish law, and when it comes to a doubt or of a mixture, we have a special verse which teaches us, we derive from that verse that mixtures, that doubts are permissible, that you go by the majority. What's the verse? Me'achrei rabim ha'omur basanhedrin. There's a verse which is not exactly speaking about mixture of meat or items. It's talking about people. The verse states, you go by the majority. That's the biblical source for majority rules. Amongst the Jewish judges, when they're judging a case and they hear out the different opinions, whatever it may be, there's a plaintiff and a defendant, whatever the case is. And now they have to give a ruling. So if you have the court, and each city, each major city would have their own court, 23 members. You take a vote, and you go by the majority. And the ultimate, the supreme Jewish court is 71 members. And if it reaches them, if they're the ones that are hearing this case, which was very unusual, take a vote, and you go by the majority. So based on that verse, where the Torah says you go by the majority, which is speaking about by the Sanhedrin, the Jewish court, as I will explain in the different section dealing with mixtures. And therefore, based on that verse, we learn out as well when it comes to other mixtures. Not people's opinions, but when it comes to pieces of meat. Majority rules. So if I know that the majority is kosher meat, then it's all good. But that verse is for the Jew. That's not the case for ben noyach. That verse is not talking about non-Jews. And therefore we don't say that, could it be that one thing should be forbidden for two people? Not necessarily. It could be forbidden for the non-Jew and permitted for the Jew. That could be. Vishuv kosav, and furthermore he writes, that apparently we could actually answer this problem. What's the problem? Namely, is there the concept of bitul, of nullification by bnei noyach? Do we say that, the majority is good, therefore it's all good, and the ben noyach can eat it all? Do we say such a thing? Or do we say, no, as long as we know for sure that there's something in there which is forbidden, it's all forbidden? So we can answer this from the fact that we ask in the Talmud, in chapter called Kol Shah, Daf Chaf Beis, L'Rebabo, the Omar, Lo Yisoichal, Isur Hana, Gamkein Bichlal. So there's a verse which says, Lo Yisoichal. See, in the Torah, it speaks about different prohibitions of things the Jews are not allowed to eat. And it says it several times. You shall not eat, it says in the plural, in the singular, and it says it a number of times. And we know that not one word in the Torah is extra or unnecessary. So each time teaches us something else. So in the Talmud it explains that where it says, you shall not eat, that teaches us that biblically it's forbidden to derive benefit from it as well. Certain things, not only can the Jew not eat, but he's not allowed to derive any benefit. Can't make money off of it. Can't feed it to his animals. So that's included. So now, Aver min hachai, the asur lo hishit leben noyach, which is forbidden for the Jew to hand it to the ben noyach. That's clear, that we've discussed. The Jew is not allowed to take Aver min hachai and hand it directly to the ben noyach. That would be the prohibition of putting a stumbling block before a blind person. And yet, the Jew is allowed to feed it to his dog. So Aver min hachai is not forbidden to have benefit. It's forbidden to eat for the Jew and the non-Jew alike. Am I allowed to derive benefit from Aver min hachai? Yes, I can feed it to my dog. Can't hand it to a non-Jew because he's not allowed to eat it. But I'm allowed to derive benefit, and I could give it to lunch for my animal. And I'm benefiting from that. That saves me oats. I gave my horse Aver min hachai. That's good. That's fine. Umay kushya. So the question is, what kind of question is that? Why can't we say that doesn't prove anything? Why can't we say that we're talking over here in the Talmud that it's an aver, a limb of a live animal that became nullified in a majority of kosher meat? That the reason why I can't give it to the ben noyach is because there's no concept of nullification. And for the Jew, it is permissible to derive benefit bitul because it became nullified. So how do you prove from there anything? Why can't we say that case is talking about that it's a piece of Aver min hachai that got mixed? And that's why I can't feed it to a ben noyach, but I could feed it to my animal. That doesn't prove that real Aver min hachai I'm allowed to benefit from. Who says I can feed Aver min hachai to my animal? I can't benefit from definite Aver min hachai. Only if there's Aver min hachai which is doubtful, so then it becomes permissible for the Jew to derive benefit. From the fact that we don't say such a thing in the Talmud, muchach, that proves the gamle ben noyach mahani bitul beroiv, that for a ben noyach, nullification in the majority does apply, and it would be permissible to him. Kei niris kavanasoi, so it seems is his intention. V'shuv siyem, and then he concludes, v'chasav, and he writes, she'ein lo yichiach din mitoich maso matan shebashas. You can't prove any actual law from a discussion in the Talmud. It's give and take over there. You can't come along and make an assumption and say, oh, now I know that. No. So because he makes the statement, it seems that his opinion is leaning more, loymar, to say, to mahani bitul ben noyach. The bitul does apply. That the concept of bitul does apply to ben noyach. We just don't have a clear proof to that. Because you can't prove an absolute ruling from a discussion of give and take in the Talmud. At any rate, you cannot say that according to the Pri Megadim, there is no such thing as nullification that it's nullified in the majority for ben noyach. Ki'im loymar, all we can say, shemistapik bazeh, that he's in doubt. He's in doubt whether the rule of being nullified in the majority applies to ben noyach or not. V'chein evesi banitpas b'shem agoin beis Ephraim letrefes b'simel amedvav soif sivkot nain veis sheiches elov shemistapik bazeh. And I brought this down also from a different person who also says that he's in doubt, and he says the Pri Megadim is in doubt as to whether we do or don't say it. And therefore, kasavti sham al masha agoyin shoylu meishiv b'tinyona cheluk alef simen yudalad daf ches amud gimel kasav bishmoi b'pshitus to b'bnei noyach lo yazin bas aruba D'loi chenu, elo misapkalei hai milsa. Therefore, I wrote about a different commentary who says clearly that by Bnei Noyach, he says it actually in the name of the Pri Megadim, that very simple and straightforward, that by Bnei Noach we don't go according to the Roiv. And I said, no, that's not so. We don't know. It's a doubt. He leaves it with a doubt. So right now, we don't have an absolute explanation as to whether we do or don't follow the majority as we do by Jews. By Jewish people, biblically speaking, there's a mixture, you go by the majority. Bnei Noach, don't know. So we're going to leave it at this point over here, and we are going to continue discussing the give and take and different opinions, whether we do or don't say that there is bitul, nullification, by a mixture for Bnei Noach. So right now, we're leaving it open-ended, and we're saying it is a doubt. We don't have a conclusion. We don't know. We cannot say with any certainty one way or the other at this point. So until next time, wishing everyone much success in studying, teaching, promoting, and most importantly, of course, observing the 7 universal Noachide commandments, God-given laws, and all of the extension thereof, and making this world the perfect world that was intended from the very beginning of creation to be the perfect godly world with the coming and the complete revelation of Moshiach now. Thank you.